right, it's time to call to order the regular meeting of the McAlester City Council, Tuesday, August 25th. We do have a quorum, and we have Rodney Briggs here to lead us in the pledge and invocation.
Let's stand together and recite the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will you pray with me? Father, we bow tonight and thank you for the opportunity to do business, and we thank you for the opportunity to be here. And may these leaders be led by you and by your Spirit, and may the meeting go well according to your plan. And God, may you put your hand on the people of McAlester tonight and begin to heal and restore. May we depend on you every day during this pandemic. God, thank you for watching after us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Cora, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith,
Here.
Stevens,
Here.
Cox,
Here.
Brown,
Here.
Boatright,
Here.
Pritchard,
Here.
Mayor.
Here. We're now on to citizens' comments on non-agenda items. Residents may address the council regarding an item that is not listed on the agenda. Residents must provide their name and address. Council requests that comments excuse me, be limited to 5 minutes. I have one, Roy Prince. I know Mr. Prince is out there. I was just talking to him.
Good evening, Mayor. How are you tonight, councilors? Good to see you tonight. I'm Roy Prince. I reside at 211 West Tyler Avenue here in McAlester. I'm also the pastor of Northgate Baptist Church at the corner of Hickory and Polk. And just as a side note, our church will be celebrating 67 years Labor Day weekend as a church ministry in this great city of McAlester. And it's been our privilege to do so. I just want to speak for, just address the issue of this emergency mandate that took place last week, that was voted on last week, and just want to give you my input, if I could. I believe as I looked around, I saw individuals and churches and businesses in our city that I thought were doing relatively well. And honestly, I thought we were doing a pretty good job. We could have improved in some things, but as you know, the shutdown hit us all hard, churches included. Churches and businesses, I think, have just started getting back on track. And as I looked in people's faces, I think I saw just a glimmer of hope coming back. There was a lot of fear, and still is, but just a glimmer of hope. And it seemed like in some lives the burden did not seem as heavy. For the first time in 5 months, we've just started seeing a few folks coming back to church. That's a long time because of the fear and so forth. And so, because I think we've been trying hard and trying to do, I just don't feel that this emergency ordinance was given at a good time, that we were forced to submit to another unfair, unnecessary emergency mandate, not for 3 weeks, not for a month, but for another 3 months. And the way I look at it, I feel like you just kicked us back down. And I feel like the burden concerning what's been going on in our country just got a little bit heavier again, right when I thought we had turned the corner. And since I'm a church leader, I'd like to speak to you from the church's perspective. Because as you know, during the shutdown, churches, we took it on the chin when we were told that we were not a institution that was necessary to stay open, but liquor stores and marijuana dispensaries were allowed because they said they were a necessary place. We took that on the chin. And all I'm asking the council and the mayor is to just remember our place as churches in our community and the service that we provide. We are listed as with businesses and all other institution as places of public accommodation. I understand that term. But I remind you that, council and mayor, that churches aren't a business, as we would think of a business, and we shouldn't be treated as such. And our people that come to our churches, they're worshipers, not customers. And we don't treat them as such. In other words, we don't treat them as customers. And you can't expect the church to do what a business would do in this matter of the mask, that if some people that can't wear a mask or won't wear a mask were to stand at the door and say, you cannot be a part of this church today. They're worshipers, not customers. I remind you that while many types of gatherings are important for the civic and economic well-being of our community, that religious worship has a particular and profound significance to communities and individuals. Churches provide help where other institutions don't or can't. We provide heavenly hope and biblical guidance and spiritual help. The fellowship that takes place when a church gathers is a life-affecting thing. A church provides soul care. And what a church provides for people cannot be purchased down at Walmart, found down at the corner liquor store, or the marijuana dispensary. We provide a greater good to our community. And what we want to do is to be allowed to serve our community without being handcuffed to a mandate. All I ask is that you have faith in your city's churches and your city's businesses and your city's people. There's no need for a 3-month mandate that we got to be handcuffed to. And let me make it clear, I'm not against wearing masks. I wear them all the time, and I'm not against social distancing. I practice both, and our church, to the best of our ability, practices both. And I believe overall our church and other churches are doing good, but there's no need. And what I think bothers me, Mayor and councilors, is not just the mandate, but the threat of being fined. Churches fall under that as well, because we are, quote unquote, a place of public accommodation. And I hope that I won't live to see the day that the city of McAlester would fine a church for doing what churches do, doing good to people, to their community, trying to help, whether they wear a mask or not. So honestly, please consider what you've done. You can undo it. Please take the handcuffs off and allow us to, churches and businesses, to continue to do and make the progress that we've been making. You've just knocked us back down, and it's just not right. Listen to the people. Jesus himself said, "He that hath ears to hear, let him hear." Be leaders. Undo this mandate. Trust us to do the right thing. Help us rebuild our city. Lead us forward in a positive way. You don't have to make it negative, make it positive. We're going to make it through all of this, but we got to do it in a positive way. We, like you, want our city to be safe. We want it to be strong. And so what I ask is, let's work together in a more positive way. Consider the threat that you've put upon businesses. And consider the threat that you have put upon churches and other organizations, religious, to fine us if you consider that we're not abiding to the letter of the law, as we might say. Please reconsider that. Because it's not just a one-time fine. If you say this organization or this business is failing here and here and here and here and here, that's $100, $100, $100, $100. That's the way the mandate reads. It's just not right. We want to keep doing what we've been doing at Northgate Baptist Church for 67 years, helping our community there at the corner of Hickory and Polk. And so I want you to know, councilors and Mayor Brown, that our church prays for you as our leaders. We've prayed for our president. We've prayed for our governor. We've prayed for our Congress. We pray for our Congress people. We will continue to do so. But just please take this into consideration from a church perspective. Because I saw posted at the place I voted today the sign that basically said, if you're not willing to wear a mask, we don't want, or you can't come into this facility. That's a church. That's a church. I understand the whys and the wherefores, but please consider the threat of the fine that comes with all of that. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. Appreciate your service. Yes, sir.
This is a non-agenda item, so I can't discuss it with you.
Sure.
But I would very much like to talk to you in the next day or two, because I think you have some misunderstandings on the ordinance from what you were just saying.
No, I've read it, Mayor, but I understand you can't discuss it. I understand that if you social distance, the mask is not a necessity or required. If we, and which we do, we practice social distancing. But if I read it, we're under the threat of $100 fine if on any given Sunday, you know, somebody turns us in or something.
Can we get together
Sure,
and talk about it the next
absolutely.
day or two?
I would love to.
Okay, great.
And thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. God bless you.
All right, we are on to consent agenda. All matters listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Tonight, we have 4 items. A, approval of minutes from July 28th, 2020 regular meeting of the McAlester City Council. B, approval of the minutes from the August 11th, 2020 regular meeting of the McAlester City Council. C, approval of claims for August 5th, 2020 through August 18th, 2020. And D, accept and place on file the Oklahomans for Independent Living quarterly report for the months of April through June 2020. Would anyone like anything removed? Okay, so-
Mayor,
Yes,
Councilman Stevens, can I get agenda item C, please?
C? Okay. Any other?
C, thank you.
C isn't cat?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I take a motion to approve items A, B, and D. Motion, Councilman Smith, second, Vice Mayor Brown. Any discussion? Corge, call the roll, please.
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Cox,
Yes.
Boatright,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, and the motion carries. Councilman Stevens?
City manager, in a economic development portion, we have a charge there for a 14th Street addendum. Could you let us know what that is, please?
Can you tell me what page that's on, Councilman?
It's in the claims for economic development.
Page number? I got one on 15. Is this to Irvin and Irvin in the amount of $620 for the 14th Street TIF addendum?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the developer on the 14th Street has asked for a change, and we are moving back to the TIF organization, the TIF committee, for a presentation. He's asking for an extension of time due to 2 of the stores being delayed.
Would you send us that addendum when you could, please, sir?
Certainly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other discussion on item C? I'd take a motion and a second to approve item C. Motion, Councilman Smith, second, Councilman Boatright. Any further discussion? Corge, you call the roll, please.
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Boatright,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Cox,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, and the motion carries. We're now on to public hearing. All persons interested in any ordinance listed under scheduled business shall have an opportunity to be heard in accordance with Article 2, Section 212B of the city charter. We have 3 tonight. The first is an ordinance creating Chapter 94, Streets, Sidewalks, and Other Public Places of the McAlester City Code, Article 1 in general, Sections 94-8, permit for electric charging stations on public streets and sidewalks, repealing all conflicting ordinances and providing for severability. Second is an ordinance amending Chapter 110, Vehicles for Hire of the McAlester City Code, repealing all conflicting ordinances and providing for severability. The third is an ordinance of the City of McAlester, Oklahoma, amending ordinance number 2656, which establishes the budget for fiscal year 2019-2020, repealing all conflicting ordinances, providing for severability clause, and declaring an emergency. Take a motion in a second to open the public hearings. Motion, Councilman Smith, second Vice Mayor Brown. Any discussion?
Are we planning on,
We gotta vote for, go ahead.
I said, is this a ordinance that's gonna allow the charging stations to be set up?
This is just to open the public hearing on it.
Okay.
So, any other discussion? Cora, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Cox?
Yes.
Boatright?
Yes.
Pritchard?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes, we're now in public hearing. Anyone wanting to address the first ordinance, come forward. Seeing no one. Anyone interested in addressing us on the ordinance amending about vehicles for hire? You can do it here or at the agenda item. It's your call. Okay. Anyone interested in addressing us on the budget amendment? Okay, seeing no one, I would take a motion and second to close public hearings. Motion, Councilman Smith, second Vice Mayor Brown. Any discussion? Cora, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Boatright?
Yes.
Pritchard?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Cox?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. We're now on to agenda item number 1, presentation acceptance of actuarial funding report as of July 1st, 2020, and the GASB financial report statements as of June 30th, 2020 for the City of McAlester Defined Benefit Retirement Plan and Trust. Mr. Nordstrom.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce Nordstrom. I'm the actuary for your pension plans. I'm here to present the funding results and the accounting results of the most recent valuations that we prepared. Opening comment, the funding results and the expense results are two different forms of looking at the plan. One is for determining what a recommended contribution would be, and the other is dictated by the Government Accounting Standards Board for how you have to handle the financial statements for the city. I'm going to start with the funding. I'm going to limit my remarks mostly to what's on the summary on page 3, so I know you have copies of the report. If you can go to page 3. The annual required contribution, it's actually a recommended contribution, it's not required, but you can see it's a little bit higher than last year. That's a result of the assets not cooperating fully, but still very close to last year's numbers. And in fact, most of the numbers in the report are very little change from last year. We've achieved a stability in the plan that, 7 years ago when the plan was frozen, we were hoping we'd get to this point. We are there. The liabilities and the assets are under control, the funded status is under control, and the contributions are not unmanageable. You can see that the market value of assets is $13 million. We use a actuarial value that spreads gains and losses over a period of years. That keeps the contributions more stable. That's 13.7. The accrued liability is 17. The funded status using market value of assets is around 77%. The actuarial value is around 80%. If you would turn to the page 7, it shows a graph of the liability and the assets each year the last 5 years. And you can see that things have stabilized and actually have started to kind of crest and come downward. That's what we expect the plan to do. Once you've frozen it, retirees continue to get their payments, actives move to retirement status, and the liabilities should come down as you pay out all those benefits. This is what we hoped to see 7 years ago when we looked at the plan and were forced to freeze it. This report is almost a victory lap for hitting what we had hoped our targets could be, getting where we hoped we could be, get the pressure off the city budget so that you can give the services that you need to provide. The last thing I want to talk about is on page 10. We derive the contribution by considering the amortization of the liability in two steps. There's a liability that arose prior to 2009 that's amortized over a fixed period. This is a decision made by the city council in like 20 years ago. Anything arising after 2009, we use a 20-year amortization, and you can see that in 6 years, $327,000 of your contribution is going to drop out. Then you'll be contributing around $150,000 plus interest, so more good news. If you run into tough times and you need help with a contribution, you can't make it, we can come up with other ways to do it that will keep the city's the plan's finances in good order. That's very important because on the accounting report, which we'll get to in a second, our ability to use a relatively high discount rate equal to the return on assets depends on the plan always having projected assets to pay benefits when they come due. You run short of assets, we're forced to discount at a much lower rate, 3%, kind of a government obligation, municipal bond rate. As a rule of thumb, every 1 percentage point that we drop your discount rate will increase the liability by 10%. So 17 million at 7% would become 18,000,007 at 6%, 20,000,004 at 5%. So we need to make sure that the plan always has projected assets that will allow the benefits to be paid. On the accounting side, under the CAFR rules dictated by the GASB, the Government Accounting Standards Board, you have to put the funded status of the plan on your balance sheet each year, and the expense is a modification of the change in funded status from beginning of year to end of year. Certain items, gains and losses, asset results from the markets can be amortized as opposed to immediately recognized. But if you look at page 1 of the second report, the GASB report, you can see this lays out what happened during the year, and you've got a position in the plan, assets, you've got liabilities in the plan, and then in the bottom section, you've got a net position, which is the funded status, and you can see where it goes from year to year. We don't get to use the actuarial value of assets on the accounting side, so we have to reflect gains and losses immediately. That hurt a little bit. On the following page, we just show more information about where the assets are invested. If you will turn to page 4, there we show the reconciliations and the amortization bases that have been accumulated over the last few years since this new statement was adopted. And then on the last page, on page 5, we show an estimate of what the expense will be for the plan for the fiscal year ending 6/30/21. We can't know the exact number until we get assets and liabilities at that date because you have to mark it to the market at the last day of the fiscal year. But this is approximately where the expense will fill out. Whew, I just went through an awful lot of stuff very quickly. If there's any questions, anybody wants to take a class in actuarial theory, happy to answer any questions that you have.
It took quite a bit longer in the Audit and Finance Committee meeting.
We spent more time on it there, yes. I went over it quickly because of that, so.
But all in all, we're sitting pretty well.
I think so, yes. You've gotten over the hump and, made the hard choices you had to make, and the plan is doing much better than it was 7 years ago.
Yeah, and we're about close to 77% funded.
Yeah, and remember, every time you pay out a liability, you're also paying down your assets, and that will have the effect of tending to reduce your funded status. But the fact that you've been able to maintain an 80% funded status while paying a lot of benefits speaks, well to the management of the plan.
I couldn't tell, did someone say mayor? I'm guessing not.
May have been a cat.
Yeah, it's this new world.
$200,000 from last year to next year.
Right.
That's pretty good.
All right, are there any questions or comments?
May I recommend a roll call?
Yes. Cora, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Boatright,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Cox, Councilman Cox,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, so we still are all here. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Mr. Nordstrom? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce.
Stay safe.
Appreciate it.
We're on to agenda item number 2, discussion on rural water districts, contracts and pricing. Ms. Irvin.
Mayor and council, to start this discussion on the district's rates, I want to recap the information that you were sent in email, or they've passed out the information here in the council chambers. I'm here representing many other people, hard work and input into this. So the Audit and Finance Committee has reviewed the water cost analysis that you have in your packet, and they've reviewed it for the last several years. We started reviewing the most recent numbers about 6 months ago. Each councilman has this analysis, and so you can see that it is a calculation to figure how much it is for us to produce 1,000 gallons of water. It contains direct costs like the payment of our water rights, $50,000–$60,000 a year, and it has our indirect costs, and so it uses allocations to come up with the water cost amount based on consumption of water produced. The 479 that you see was discussed at the Audit and Finance Committee. They requested more information from accounting staff, and this is also included in your distributed information. It's called Exhibit C and D. And so this was discussed and voted on by the Audit and Finance Committee to recommend the 5.79 rate to this council. I will not go into all the details of the accounting, but the main concern of the committee, which this committee is made up of the mayor and a councilman and citizen members who have finance and accounting backgrounds. The main concern was that the water districts make up 45% of the water consumption, but only 35% of their water revenue. And that if the city did not raise the water district rates, then it would be our citizens subsidizing the water districts. And so the rate that we have does not have any, and has never had any replacement costs of our aging water infrastructure. And so that's what I'm kind of summarizing what the Audit and Finance discussed. But the additional concern was brought about by our study that Dale Burke with ISG presented. It's our future water infrastructure needs because of the hydraulic analysis that he did. And this was presented to council, I think, a month and a half ago. It's also in your packet and was emailed to those at home. Dale Burke is here tonight to answer questions if you have questions on that study. And Sherry Swift is here for any accounting questions about the rate. But the hydraulic analysis basically was a proposed system of projects and their priority and estimated costs that we're going to need to invest in our main transmission lines in our water system. And so I guess I have talked with Mr. Harp, who is here to represent the districts. I have full respect for him and the districts, but I guess I'll turn it over to him or whoever you
Well,
or the
Ms-
council?
Mr. Burke,
For
I'll have
discussion.
Mr. Burke go first, and that way we'll get one, go from there.
Yes, sir, Mayor. Thank you.
Could you just give the 40,000-foot view of what was presented to us?
Sure. We identified 29 projects that needed to be done that was critical to the distribution infrastructure for McAlester. Total price on those improvements was right at $30 million.
And if I remember correctly, it was 20 million was recommended in the first year.
That's, I believe you're right, yes.
Yeah.
2023, 24.
Yeah, in the 20s, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on this part of it? If not,
Mayor, this
Yep.
is Councilman Stevens.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Burke, on what we're discussing with, and I remember this presentation, we've talked about it, and I know we have issues in our water system that we need to start addressing a lot sooner than later. My question is how are the transmission lines to the water districts? Are these some of the improvements? I mean, I guess what I'm trying to wrap my mind around is with the rate increase that we've given them, are they sharing more of a burden on our water system, or are they sharing less of a burden?
If you look at a distribution system from a hydraulic standpoint, okay, the system as a whole has to transmit the water throughout the system itself, okay. I think there's one water district that connects at the farthest southern point, and the analysis itself doesn't really show the water going one path. It shows it going many paths, okay. I could go into detail into the model itself. I haven't done that and see if we can determine where the water goes, but I can tell you right now with the grid system that most water systems have, it's going to be very difficult to say this is the water that supports a water district itself. It's a system as a whole.
Okay, so then you're saying that the water that they receive, it flows through the whole system before it gets to these water districts, or do they have main transmission lines from the plant?
There are large diameter lines throughout the system itself that feeds the whole system itself. I think it goes down to about a 12-inch line. So there are transmission lines within the system itself, but to determine where the water goes and feeds the water system itself, I mean, we can try to do that analytically, but it's going to be very difficult to say that this line here is the only one that feeds a certain water district. On the northern side, it'd be a little bit easier because that's where all your main transmission line, that's where all the main transmission lines come into the system itself. But as you work your way through the system itself, it's going to be a little bit more difficult.
Okay, so for example, then, and I'm asking questions because I'm trying to educate myself better. So,
Sure.
Rural Water District number 5, they're one of the more southern water districts that we serve. So there's not a main transmission line that comes from our water plant directly to them and then branches out. You're saying that it branches all the way through the system and then gets to them?
That's correct.
Okay. Does it do that with all of the water districts or just some of the water districts?
Like I said, the northern ones are a little easier to isolate, but when you get down to like Real Water District 5 or 7, 7 picks up out there by the industrial park. It has to go through the system itself to get out there. And another thing you got to look at is we got water storage throughout the town, and you need that for a distribution system to function properly also. So you got main lines that even branch off of the branches to go to the water treatment, to the storage tanks, and then the water gets distributed from there also. I hope I'm
Okay.
I'm answering your question here.
No, you are. I'm sure I'll have some later in the process too. So with that being said, is the whole system have to maintain the pressure to then pressurize and distribute water to the water districts?
I mean, the question is, do you need the entire system to provide water to the water districts? And no, you don't.
Yes.
But I don't know how. I ain't saying we cannot do it, but it's going to be very difficult to start isolating lines and saying this line is not needed, if you will.
Okay. Because here's why I'm asking this is since looking at some of the information that was emailed to us today from the city with the accounting perspective and things like that. Like I see here that we have the total cost of thousands of gallons treated, and then we have the thousands of gallons billed. And that's a pretty dramatically different number. So I'm trying to figure out, that's a shade over 400,000 gallons lost a year, it looks like, from 18 to 19. And I'm trying to figure out if there's a way that we can isolate and work with water districts at the same time to figure out how we do this with them and how we charge there. But there's also a way for us to figure out here at the same time, we're losing a lot of money. It drives that cost $1.74 a gallon for treating that we could be using. And it seems like to me, if we're selling that much and we're treating that much, then we're probably treating a lot more than we're actually selling, which is but that has to have some effect on the quality of our water too, wouldn't it?
It does, yes.
What kind of effect do you think it has?
Well, anytime you have a water line leak, you have the possibility of introducing contaminants into the line itself. So once you do that, the quality goes down. If I understand the question right.
Okay. What do you think it does to raw water before, if you have a water line break and you're treating it at a much higher exposure and then selling it at a much reduced amount? Do you think you can have some difference on the quality of our water?
If I understand the question right, the quality comes out of the water plant. Therefore, the distribution would not have an effect on the quality of the water on a non-broken line.
Okay, I think that's all the questions I have for the moment. I'm sure I'll be back with more. Thank you, Mr. Burke.
You bet. Thank you.
Did anyone else have any questions for Mr. Burke? In that case, Mr. Harp.
Water's about to get away from me here. My name's Millard Hart. Those of you that know me personally, you know me by my family nickname Bucky. I grew up here. I moved away and spent a lot of my life in Oklahoma City working for the Ernst part of what is the international accounting firm, Ernst & Winnie, as Ernst & Young now, as an auditor. I also spent 10 years as an auditor with the Oklahoma State University A&M Board of Regents and audited a lot of the universities around the state. 20 years ago plus, I moved back home to McAlester, married my high school girlfriend, and went to work as controller for a government contracting operation here in town. I also serve as chairman of Rural Water District Number 9's board. I'm here speaking for, not legally representing, but just speaking for the 5 water purchase districts that are purchasing water from the city of McAlester. And we have some concerns, and we just wanted to share those with you. Historically, the rural water districts were established in order to provide water infrastructure and water to the rural district customers, inhabitants, back in the 60s. we, the districts, went out and borrowed about $5 million in 1960 dollars, which is $39 million in today's dollars. And we built an infrastructure that covers 600 miles approximately of water lines, water towers, pump stations, and other things. Part of that infrastructure, fire hydrants, and those kind of things. In contrast, the city of McAlester has 187 miles of the same thing. We have maintained that. First, we had to borrow the money and pay it all back for decades, but then we've maintained that infrastructure in the rural areas for 60 years, basically. When the districts partnered with the city of McAlester back then for the city to provide water, I don't think that you could safely say that anyone involved with that truly believed that it was going to be the responsibility of the rural water districts to support the entire infrastructure of the city of McAlester, which is the way this is calculated. Certainly we feel there could be some refinements made to this process, this calculation process, that would result in a more reasonable and fair and equitable solution. This is the easy way to do it and cover all your costs, or we're going to cover 46% of those on your behalf, on our behalf too. It's a partnership. And we fully understand that we need to be paying for the cost of the water to be produced and some of the transportation to get it to our access points around the city. I'm lucky, I'm on the north side. I don't have as much access problem or whatever, but you have to charge us all the same, and we're all willing to, we were willing at the time, and we're still willing to sharing those costs. So the guys on the south side of town that have a long way to go, a lot longer way to go, we share equally with as far as the transportation costs go. I have allergies, and the ragweed is killing me.
I've been coughing and clearing my throat up here the whole time, so
I know. Don't you hate to do that these days?
Yes.
So, just to give you a couple, well, let me back up. We're not here to challenge the whole thing and demand anything. We just want to be involved with the process. We were not included in any of the discussion. We were not, we didn't have access to these calculations until the last couple of weeks. The city has been wonderful. Tony has been working with me and provided me with anything I asked. Dale Burks has also talked with us and provided us information. And just to give you a couple of items that we see some concern with, let's talk about what Dale was talking about. We're going to all have to envision the city of McAlester map and the water plant up north. And the lines come into the town, and then they flow all the way through. And I have no argument with Dale that the water does flow through the whole thing. The issue is, do we really need or have to have all that in order to get water from point A to point B? And he answered that, no. There are big main lines that pretty much carry this stuff, but because of the way it's structured, it's going to flow out into the neighborhoods and wherever else. We just think it's unfair to charge us 46% to maintain the entire McAlester system. Every line going to everybody's house, every line running out to the expo, all those, there's a lot of infrastructure in there. And yeah, we probably benefit from some of the water towers. No issue there. We would just like to spend some time and work with you guys and come up with a reasonable way to estimate some of this stuff so that we're not carrying 46% of your entire infrastructure. The question that Counselor Stevens pointed out about the gallons treated versus the gallons billed, which we call water loss in the water business, that is comes from a couple of different things. One, just leaks. I mean, you're going to have leaks. I guarantee you got some leaks that are running right straight into the sewer that you will never find until you actually dig that up someday for some other reason probably, and you'll stumble across them. We have the same thing in the country in some of the sandy soil and some of the rocky soil. You'll have a leak, and it'll leak for who knows how long and never come to the surface, and we have no way of knowing that it's going away. So we have water loss also. But the way this is calculated, this water loss also that we're being charged for and is being used to calculate our share of the cost also includes the entire usage for the city of McAlester. You don't meter that and back that out of here. It's anything you're sprinkling, ball fields, whatever, the water in these buildings, all of the city buildings, whatever water the maintenance people are using, heck, I don't know, cleaning their equipment or whatever else. There's a lot of, I don't know how much it is, and we have no way of knowing because we haven't done any analysis to support these numbers. They come together in big pieces, but what we'd really like to do is sit down with you and talk about, I have a lot of cost accounting experience, and I understand cost accounting. Tony does a great job. Pete knows a lot. I mean, we could work together and reach a rate that is fair to you all and fair to us also, because we have to help support your infrastructure. We have to help support that transmission, the water plant. That's vital to our existence just as it is to yours. And we want to be partners in that rather than, here, take this, with no input and no, at least timely and significant. I agree with Dale that it's daunting from a cost accounting standpoint to look at that map and go, how are we going to allocate some costs to water going to get to here, 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 and here, all around the city? It's a daunting task, but I think we can come up with something more reasonable and equitable by providing some analysis and spending some time on it, working with Dale, and taking a look at what are the different pieces and how can we do a logical allocation of the cost so that we can pay our fair share. Just as an example of something that I think is not following a very good cost accounting approach, excuse me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because I may be, but this is my understanding after we've talked. There's a utility office department, $622,000 a year. That's basically the billing department. They read the meters, enter it into the computer, produce the bills, collect the money. And they may not even collect the money. I don't know. Maybe the treasurer does that. But they have to at least post the payments. You all have 8,000 customers, and they're producing 8,000 bills like that. 16 of those bills are ours. 16. It doesn't take any more time. It doesn't take 46% of the cost of that department to process our 16 bills. That's just one clear example of where this analysis falls down. So at any rate, that's enough. The point is, we think that there's a lot better way to allocate these and come up with a fair and reasonable rate for us, and we would like to see you all give us that opportunity to work with you. We'll be happy to. Jim Henley is here. He has 20 years experience with rural water. I have over 10. We would be happy to help. And so what we would ask is that maybe you delay the implementation of the rate increase until another month or two and let us all get together and work through it, take a good hard look at it, and then when we're done, we can go to our districts and say, City of McAlester worked with us as our partners. They did a great job. They're fair and equitable, and we think this is the right rate to be paying. And it may come out the same. I don't know. But I don't think so. The other piece, and I think, unless I'm totally misunderstood this, I think that there is a component of the future costs built into this 579 rate. Now, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, but the number that you come down to on the first page of Exhibit B is 479, and yet we're being billed 579. It was my understanding that that extra dollar per thousand is to go towards future repairs and maintenance. Is that not a fair statement?
That's a fair statement, but when I was talking about the rate that did never include it was the 479, which was on that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just misunderstood. But just to be clear, there's a whole nother dollar added on there for that, which comes out to the tune of about.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just can't hear. I can't hear the conversation going on. I think there's a couple of people speaking, but they're not both audible on the conference call.
Oh, sorry. You have to, I guess, lean closer to the mic.
I'll try to get a little closer to the mic.
Is that any better, Councilman Pritchard?
There is. I thought someone started speaking, maybe in the audience or something. Maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. That was the assistant city manager speaking from the audience. So, Ms. Irvin, could you come up and repeat what you said?
Sorry. All I said was that the 479 is the rate in which I was referring to when I said there wasn't any replacement costs involved in it, because that was the exhibit I was talking about at that time. But he's right in that I agree that the 579 is the extra dollar.
Yeah.
So we were in agreement.
Yeah, the 479 is our cost to produce, right, at the plant.
No.
Can I ask you a question on that point too?
Okay, could you repeat that, Councilman Pritchard?
Oh, I was just going to say, can I ask a question about that replacement cost?
Yes.
So the 479, if I'm looking at this correctly, I'm on page 2 of this email I got, Schedule 1. It looks like there's about $940,000 of interest and depreciation built into the total administrative department expenses. Now, wouldn't that amount, that interest and depreciation, or at least the depreciation portion of that, wouldn't that go to cover replacement cost?
I'm going to give you my what I think it is, and I'm going to ask one of the experts. I believe that's replacement cost for the plant, not for the system. But would that be correct?
Is he talking about interest and depreciation?
Yes, on Schedule 1.
The interest and depreciation is what we have borrowed on our bonds, and so the interest is what we have to pay on our bonds. So that column is really about our bonds payments that the MPWA has already.
So, if you know, I mean, what portion of that? One's 109,000, one is 832. Well, how many dollars of depreciation are in that? Do you know?
I don't know exactly.
No, she said she did not know exactly.
Okay.
Well, obviously the depreciation is the depreciation of all the assets
Okay.
having to do with the water treatment plant and those
But
departments.
not the distribution system, just the plant, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Sure? Are you sure?
I can double check that.
Yeah, because you got to have depreciation in there somewhere for that.
Yes,
For the whole system.
right.
You put everything else in there, I'm assuming that all the depreciation for all of the, both the distribution system and the production system would be in those numbers. And I wanted to point out that for Councilman Pritchard, that the actual cost just to produce the water at the plant is the $3.25. The $4.79 is arrived at by taking the gallons billed and allocating the costs to those billed gallons, not the cost to
I
produce.
can't, whoever's speaking, I can barely hear them.
You have to lean into the mic.
All right, let me try again. The $3.25, ooh, there we go. The $3.25 at the top is the actual cost for the production of the water at the plant. The $4.79 is allocating the water loss, or calculating that in to, and increasing that rate, because you're billing less than what you're producing. So you're losing water, and that's building that loss of water into the $4.79 rate. Okay.
Was that any better, Councilman Pritchard?
Yes, I heard of that then. Thank you.
And the same thing applies to the future expenses. One, you've built a certain amount of the replacement into that depreciation number, which I would like, and those are the kinds of questions that we need to be answering before you set a rate for us that we're going to have to use. We need to know the answers to these kinds of questions as to what all really is in there and how it all fits together. And that's why I'm saying I think a little additional analysis would be beneficial and strengthen our partnership. The same thing applies to the future costs as it does to the flow of the water through the system. The future costs would be fall into the same category, with there being some allocation. I mean, fixing the Hickory Street or whatever is beneficial to the city of McAlester, and in the grand scheme of things contributes to the flow through the whole thing, but it's not necessarily what should be allocated to the rural water districts as part of this analysis. My other question is on these future costs. We don't know if it's legal for us to pay in advance for things that don't exist. I mean, we're basically banking money with you. And then the other question is, once it goes into your MPWA fund, can you, with a stroke of a pen, move that to somewhere else and pay the police raises, or do some other things with the money, or or is that money restricted to future use for the water system? I mean, obviously, you're probably going to use it for the water system because you got to have it, but just as a matter of assurances.
Yes, we
because
can transfer from the MPWA.
You can?
Yes.
Okay. So we would want, we would think that we would need to put some kind of restrictions in there, or whatever, I don't know. At least we need to be discussing these things. And if the answer is that's the way it is, then that's the way it is. But we'd like to have some discussion about these kinds of things. Oh, I apologize. I meant to turn that off. So, at any rate, so that's what we would like to ask, is that if you could, we'd like to work with you to come up with, work with you to come up with reasonable rates that everyone can agree with, and strengthen our partnership going forward. I think we've had a good one so far, and we'd like to keep it that way. Anybody have any questions?
I've got one more person signed up to speak, so
I'll get out of the way.
then I'll open it up to questions. Mr. Briggs?
I'm going to relinquish my spot to Jim. Is he already on?
No, he isn't, but he came in a little late, so
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay, do this here. I'm Jim Henley. I've talked to you before last time whenever you voted for this. And a couple of things, I don't have the credentials that Bucky has, but I do have an MBA from SMU, so I know a little bit about this stuff. I've been doing this for 20 years. Let me take these off because they fog up. And some things that he may or may not be aware of. Part of the water usage that you have and we have, all the districts have, is flushing. We're required to do a certain amount of flushing. You have to do it quarterly on dead end lines. You do it. We do stage 2 disinfection byproduct testing. You guys do it the same as we do. So you flush your lines before you take the test. We do that also. I did an analysis of we tested two points. One of them is right within 200 yards of a master meter, and the other one is 6 miles out in the country. Those are set by EPA. It takes me 50,000 gallons a month. I do it only every 3 months, so it's 150,000 gallons to pull water from the Carl Albert Tower out to my test point so that I'm testing fresh water. That I just eat that expense. But the flushing that y'all do to meet your standards, again, you're building that cost into the water that we are subsidizing your flushing, because that cost is not taken out. That cost is built into that number that we have, because it's based on the total gallons of water made. So we're paying for something that is a cost that you guys have to have. You have to do that. The other problem that we have, and I don't know if the other districts have it or not, but in my June test for the stage 2 disinfection byproducts, at that test station that was 300 yards from the master meter, so that's water immediately out of the water district, we test for 2 things, and both of those things did not meet the standards. We're working under a consent order from DEQ, and we have been for 3 or 4 years, because of that problem. We can't, if the water comes to us and doesn't pass the standards, there's nothing we can do about it. We can't fix it. We can't make it better. It just is what it is. So that's a problem that may be resolved, maybe because I'm on the south side. So I have 5 master meters, and they're scattered in various places through the city. So maybe, I don't know how where your test sites are, but we actually changed our test month to correspond with the city's month, so that we pull our samples the same month that the city does, so we benefit from whatever flushing you do, but we still did not make the standard. So, but flushing is a problem. That's millions of gallons, literally, that the city uses to clear out your system. I know that you do that a couple of times a year just to flush the sediment and stuff out of the lines, because I see them doing it. I've been here 20 years. I brought them so I could show them to you. Water purchase contracts from these go back into the 90s. And we've had a good working relationship with the city. There are, in reading through some of these contracts, there are clauses in there where one of them says that the city will not make a major increase in price without a year's notice. Another one says, and this has come up in a previous meeting where we talked about a leak allowance. I have a contract that says that the city will do a leak allowance if a water district has a major leak, and you can tie it to a volume, so many gallons involved in the leak. So, but in those contracts were several pages long, it showed a thing of working together with the city. So we've had that in the past. I've actually had the city fix a leak for me one time. The PSO broke a line. I didn't have a full-time employee. The city came and fixed the leak. So we've had that kind of relationship. I really would like to see us keep that. this came as a surprise, a shock, because, I have here in my hot little hands, that I showed you last time, a signed contract signed by the city, by the mayor, and by the city attorney, and by, Rodney didn't sign it, another of our board members signed it, that we had a contract for this year. And I understand that this probably came as a surprise to y'all, that you needed to charge more, but it would have been really good to work with us, to let us know, so that we could, have some advance notice and, plan a little bit. So, but, those are kind of just some thoughts. I don't want to see that relationship go away. I really want to see us continue to work with the city if there's a way that we can do that. So that's all I have. Anybody have any questions? Nope. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to open it up for any questions or comments from anyone from the council.
Mayor.
Vice Mayor Brown?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. What kind of rate increase, number-wise, went to the rural water districts? Somebody had told me 52%. I think I mentioned that before.
56%.
56%?
56. 5-6.
And you got, I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, go ahead.
So can you come back up here?
Sure.
Thank you, sir. So were you contacted before any of this went?
The way it went, the new water purchase contracts run from July the 1st of a given year to June 30th. And the city sent us out, the new water purchase contract, it was signed by the city on May 26th. We got it in June. It went before our board, they approved it, and we signed it on June the 11th. And that was moving our rate from $370 per thousand to $379 per thousand based on the CPI, Consumer Price Index. And on July the 10th, if I have my dates right, we got a note. We got two things from the city. Notice a proposed proposed water service fee rate increase, and on that was on June the 29th. And on July the 10th, I got a thing that said our contracts were null and void, even though they were signed by the city and by us. It said that they were to disregard the contracts. So that was the notice that we had. And, that again, and I understand the city needs to do what it needs to do, but if that answers your question.
Have you passed that rate? You had to increase your rates out there as well?
The rate was $370 per thousand. My water bill that I got for July was $379. That's what the city charged me for July. The new rate goes into effect August 1st. Went into effect August 1st according to the new contracts, and so I will, at the end of this month, if the city's going to bill me $579, I'm going to have to increase my prices to cover that, because that's what I'm paying for the water. I cannot not do that. That's a significant part of my budget. That is a 56% increase in my cost of water. So my rates will go up a significant amount.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, sir.
And everybody else's will too. We run a business, so to speak, just like the city runs a business. The city has to have income, and you have to balance your budget, and you have to do the things that you have to do. And I understand that. We do the same thing. And so we try to keep our costs, because Rodney is chairman of our board, we try to keep our costs as low as we can for our customers, because, and we do that. There's only 2 full-time employees in the water district, 1 part-time person. We've got 760 some odd meters. We got 62 miles of line. we got pump stations and, you know, all the things that, fire hydrants and all the things that all the other water districts have. I don't have any towers, the other districts do. So we, you know, we will increase our rates to cover the cost. We can't not do that. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
I have a question. I don't know if it's be specifically for you, because I don't know if that's proprietary information or not, but what do you guys sell per thousand for?
Well, our rate is a sliding rate. We charge, I've looked, I took just a generic account from the city, I'm sorry, I took a average account for my district, and I applied the city's rates to that to see what it was. And I'm charging slightly more than what the city does for the same amount of gallons. But my rate, there's 4 different price tiers in my rate. And the suggested way that RECD and everybody suggests is that the higher, the more you use, the more it costs you to use that water. And I can't tell you off the top of my head what my rates are. They're numbers, and I don't memorize numbers.
Yeah, well.
Not that I wouldn't, but I
Yeah,
just
yeah. Well,
don't know
when we
it.
were looking at this, and this isn't specific to your district, but if I remember right, and Councilman Smith can probably correct me if I'm wrong on this, when we were looking at this in audit and finance, it was averaging about $17 per thousand.
That what now?
The water districts for selling cost is what they were selling.
That
for.
I'm sorry, I don't understand I couldn't tell what you said.
That basically, the average cost from the districts was that they were selling was about $17 per thousand gallons.
Now, my average, I have a program, actually it's a thing that RECD made up years ago that I use to calculate my new rates. And it's actually a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, that I can plug my budget in, my cost, you know, all the budget, and then I can change numbers around and find out. We have a minimum. We charge $18 for the first 1,000 gallons. That's the minimum, and then we have a rate that goes up from there. And I can change those until I find something that is reasonable. The average bill, and again, don't hold me to this 100%, but my average bill for the water district, and understand this covers people that use, you know, Big Mac used to use 2 or 3 million gallons a month. I don't use as much now. But my average bill was about a little under $40 a month. Because, you know, mostly it's residential. We do have a significant amount of commercial customers. Okay?
Are there
Anything else?
any other questions or comments? Mr. Stasiak, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Not at this time.
Thank you all very much for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will move to agenda item number 3. Consider and act upon an ordinance of the city of McAlester to allow for permitting of the installation of electronic charging stations on city right-of-ways, on public streets and sidewalks. I'd like to table this till the second meeting in September. The city employee that was tasked with doing this was tasked with many other things and didn't get a chance to move forward on it. So, is that a motion?
Yes, sir, it's a motion, yes.
Motion, Vice Mayor Brown, second, Councilman Smith. Jeez. I'm used to calling you first and you second. You guys switch it up. You throw me on. Is there any discussion? Cora, would you call the roll, please? Second meeting in September. Yeah.
Vice Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Cox, Councilman Cox, Boatright,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, and motion carries. We're on to agenda item number 4, discussion and possible action on approving the McAlester Cemetery Board recommendation to expand cemetery perpetual care, or to expend cemetery perpetual care interest money to purchase 48 feet of tough track Altoona mat ground protection. Who gets this?
I do.
Mr. Stasiak.
Mayor, this was tabled from the March 24th agenda. This is for 48 feet of tough. This is for our openings and funerals. It comes out of our interest that we accrue off of the perpetual fund, which is to be used for capital improvements. So staff is recommending the purchase of 48 feet of tough track be used utilizing the interest earned off of the perpetual care fund for the cemetery in the amount of $3,130.
Are there any questions, comments? Councilman Smith?
I think I understand what was for. Somebody asked me the other day, a citizen, how much money do we have in that fund and about how much interest does it earn?
We have about approximately $395,000 in that fund. Last year it earned a little bit under $5,000 in interest. What we've focused on in the past is the zero-turn lawnmowers that are $8,000 or $9,000, weed eaters, those type of things that take care of the cemetery. So this item is actually, stability on uneven ground for the openings of for funerals and those type of things. And when it's wet, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any other questions, comments? Take a motion in a second. Motion, Councilman Smith, second, Councilman Boatright. Any further discussion? Cora, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Boatright,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Cox,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, and the motion carries. We're on to agenda item number 5, consider and act upon authorizing the mayor to sign the contractor's final pay number 6 and certificate of substantial completion for the contract with Sunrise Construction LLC for the 2019 CDBG sewer project. The accepted project is completed. Mr. Burke.
Yes, sir. Thanks, council. This project is part of the 2019 CDBG grant. We bid the project out. Sunrise Construction was the low bidder. The work has been completed, and we have done a final inspection, and they have completed the punch list that we had given them. So our recommendation is to accept the project as complete and pay the contractor their final amount.
And Mr. Stasiak?
Mayor, I just want to add one thing. We tend to, not our little successes here at the city. And, these CDBG projects every year amount to somewhere around $200,000, which isn't a tremendous amount of money. But if you look at this project, we replaced 2,117 linear feet of sewer line in this city. We've done that for 10 or 11 years since I've been here. You're talking about 20,000-30,000 feet of pipe, and it becomes significant at what we're getting accomplished underneath the surface of this city. And it's gone a long way. We're making great strides in a lot of areas, especially the older areas of our community. And it's with these type of projects that we're making a difference over time.
This is a sewer in 3rd Ward, isn't it?
This is on the west side of town, yes.
Yeah. That's
One other thing I like to add to what the city manager had to say was this particular project, we bid it out. We got such good bids in. We had remaining funds, and we were out bidding the additional work that we can do on this. So the money's going a long ways.
Yeah, I think we did that
For
at
the
our
city.
last meeting, didn't we?
We did.
We did, yes, sir.
Right. Any other questions or comments? take a motion in a second. Motion, Councilman Smith, second Vice Mayor Brown.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Kid wanna vote?
Cora, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Boatright,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Cox,
Yeah.
Mayor.
Yes, and the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're on to agenda item number 6, consider and act upon an ordinance amendment of the City of McAlester amending taxi cab business license and taxi cab driver's license permits. Who gets this one?
Chief Hurd.
Chief?
This ordinance started being rewritten by my predecessor, Officer Kirk Johnston, and Andrew Slade put a lot of work into it. It basically modernizes everything in the old ordinance. The old ordinance we found was pretty much not enforceable. Most things in there were like getting your cars checked at a mechanic. You don't do that anymore. There's no inspection stickers for cars anymore. So this brings it up to where we can actually look at the cars. We had a few problems, taxi cabs in the city that were brought to our attention, and we really couldn't enforce it. So we used our ordinance and also looked at other ones from other cities as a template to try to modernize and bring it to something that we can use and enforce if we need to.
I know we have people signed up to speak. Brian?
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor. Everything that we've seen in the draft for this ordinance, by the way, I'm Brian West. I own Rover Taxi in McAlester. Everything we see in this ordinance that has been brought up, we agree with. There's 3 things in here that I would recommend being changed. One of them's minor. I think the word his designee just needs to be designee, make it gender neutiral.
What page?
This is
That's
pretty
actually,
much,
that's
it's,
actually throughout.
it's throughout. It says,
Yeah.
Pull the
Hold on.
microphone
Mr.
down.
Mayor,
Can't
ahead.
hear him?
it's very muffled. I apologize.
okay, I pulled the microphone down. I do apologize.
Is that better?
So to say again, throughout the document for these changes, it says his designee, and it says that for the city manager and the police chief. The other 2 items are the scheduled rates posted and the posting of the license. We've tried that. What we have done now is put it in a binder in the car with the insurance. It's not feasible to post an 11.5 by 8 inch sheet of paper in the car. That's how big the license is. It's just, it doesn't last. It gets ripped off. We've even tried to display it electronically. Those got destroyed as well. So those are the only changes. And that is section 110-22 and I think it's 85. 11085. Those are the only things that I would recommend changing. We do have the rates, the licenses for every driver, and the insurance, along with the taxi cab license, available in a binder in every car. It is available on command. Other than that, everything within this ordinance that has been proposed, we can meet within 30 to 60 days of it passing.
The only question I would have is, I know I've been in plenty of cities that have cabs that have things that fit on the visor for the driver's license, the driver's name and all that, and they're there for a reason, because it's probably not such a big issue in McAlester, but, you know, being able to say what this person did, and that's not disparaging cab drivers by any means,
Right.
but, you know, people are people, and sometimes people do bad things. So, I mean, I would very much like to have the driver, some kind of identification for the passenger in there visible.
We do identify the driver, and anytime somebody books a ride with us, they get a text message with not only the driver's name, their phone number and extension on our system, along with the car color and tag number. And those are displayed either via the application that you book your ride with, or via text message. So they have the information, and we can look at putting that on the visor. Our biggest issue is our cars share between drivers, so remembering to do that step sometimes could be problematic.
Oh.
And that's my concern. We do keep every driver's license within the car, and everybody should be wearing a shirt that has their name on it, such as the one I'm wearing right now. Thank you.
Which company, Mayor? Which company were you, sir? Which cab company?
Rover Taxi.
Okay.
I have someone else signed up, but I cannot read the name.
Kenny Hall, I don't have anything to add to it.
Okay. Chief? What are your thoughts on Mr. West's?
Obviously, the gender designation is a no-brainer, but I feel that there needs to be at least a picture of the driver. If we could make it smaller to where it's more feasible. I've been in cabs in many big cities, getting off at the airport or whatever, and it's just comforting to see that the guy that's driving the car is the same guy that's on the picture, on the passenger side, whether it's stuck on the seat, on the back of the front seat, or whether it's up on the visor or on the dash. I think that's something we could work out between the city and the taxi cab companies, if we can make something that would be small enough that they could, a little file card or something that would show the name of the company, the name of the driver, a picture of the driver, and that the license is valid. I think that's an easy fix.
That work for you guys? Great. Great. All right. Any questions, Councilman Smith?
In section 11081, where we're talking about no taxi cab driver's license shall be issued to any of the following persons, and it has a list. Now, over in 11053, where we're issuing licenses to the business,
Yes.
it includes in there conviction for driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, and that's not included in this list here under 11081. I think that must just be an oversight.
It could be.
We got everything hit and run, reckless driving.
The other weird thing about this one is on 11081 for the license, it's any person convicted of felony for violent or sexual offense. But back under issuing to the business, it was included a misdemeanor conviction for any violent crime. And also over under the suspension rules, 11082, there it had conviction for intoxicating liquor or drugs, and also had a conviction on hit and run, reckless driving, or any sex offense or violence. So I would assume that also includes a misdemeanor as well as a felony.
Yeah, any
true?
That's the way I interpret it too. Yes, sir.
So on 11081, first of all, we need something on drugs and alcohol, I would assume. And also, maybe instead of just having it for conviction with felony for violent or sexual offense, any conviction
of
for violent or sexual offense.
I agree.
So just strike felony under number 2.
Yeah, any person convicted of a violent or sexual offense.
And then
So will you read through all of those and check, because there may be something I
Maybe
missed
some, yes.
too.
So, do we want to act on this tonight, or do we want to get the language cleaned up?
One other thing I wanted to mention, and see if my fellow councilman, several years ago, we set up a kind of a procedure or policy where if we had something like this coming before us, we would have at least one reading of it. In other words, it'd be brought to this meeting, we'd be able to mull it over, talk it over, and then come back at the next meeting and actually pass it. And I would be in favor of doing that again. Every time we get one of these things, it's a little bit complicated. It'd be nice if we got to look at it, talk about it, and then come back to pass it. Does anybody else feel that way?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because what do we got total in our agenda packages? We've got a few hundred pages, and a lot of it's legalese. So, yeah, so in that case, are you making a motion to table this to the next meeting?
That would be my motion, yeah.
Yeah. Is there a second? Second, Councilman Boatright?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so, right now the motion is to, table this to the first meeting in September to, get the language cleaned up. And, is there any, discussion? Corey, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Boatright,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Cox,
Yeah.
Brown,
Yes.
Pritchard, Councilman Pritchard,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, and the motion carries. Mr. West, you might get with the chief and, as far as that licensing stuff goes, get some language that's workable for.
Excellent. Thank you, guys.
You bet, thank you. Okay, we're on to agenda item number 7, consider and act upon adoption of the vehicle use policy for city personnel using city-owned, leased, and personal vehicles for city business. Ms. Irvin.
Well, again, I'm here representing the hard work of many individuals and their input. This is the vehicle use policy. We haven't had one since I can remember. It was once upon a time in the administrative book, which went away several years ago. But for the most part, what this does is put into place the procedures that we have in place already and just formalizes it so that we can do formal training. The safety officer plans to do formal training for everyone that uses a city vehicle once this passes. You know, it started out, Kara, the chief accountant, and Andrea, the paralegal, did a lot of research on what other cities have in place and came up with our first draft so that our safety officer and Dalton Carlton of the Public Works, Sherry Swift, and Michelle in HR, and many others. We have not had, first of all, the most important part is safety. The number one priority here is safety. And so we do, the policy addresses requirements to qualify to operate. I won't go into a whole lot of detail. I'm just going to summarize the different various parts. The main, let's see. The first one is to identify the qualifications that the drivers have to have in order to drive a city vehicle, and there is also a section on using personal vehicles, and it basically is that employees will be reimbursed for out-of-town travel at the IRS standard rate. And then the use of city-owned vehicles is the next portion, and it has rules for and clarifies what the driver is responsible for. A lot of these are common sense laws and already in place, like wearing seat belts and no texting, no personal use of work vehicles. And then the very following category is, the next section is the exception to the no personal use of vehicles. And this is, for example, for commuting, and what we base our some vehicles, and I'll pick on James. I like to pick on James. He drives a city vehicle and he commutes back and forth to work because he's required to come in at any time, any day, for an emergency situation. And so it's designated by the city manager. But he has to turn in, and he pays taxes on his payroll in order to, and it's by the IRS code of commuting rules for fringe benefits. And that's what the star is in this. We just reference the IRS guide. And so he turns in a calendar each month on the days that he's used the vehicle, because it's assumed that he's gonna stop, maybe on the way home from work at the store or something. And that's what he's paying, that tiny bit of personal use that he might have in that vehicle. And there are requirements for that vehicle. It can't be a work truck with a lift on it or anything like that. It has to be a commuting type vehicle to qualify. Also, you know, police officers and fire have their own rules about taking the cars home and things like that. So that's all addressed in that section. And then the next ones are what to do in case of an accident. And then the others are, like I said, use of safety belts and cell phone use. Talks about insurance information. And then we have attached a form for everyone that has a vehicle use agreement, so they will be trained on this policy and then sign off that they've been trained and understand their responsibility. Do you have any questions?
Just, we're not doing anything new, we're just formalizing it.
We're formalizing it.
Councilman Smith?
On page 2 there, up at the top on sentence 5, says employees will be reimbursed out-of-town mileage at the current IRS standard, providing their use of personal vehicle was pre-approved by whom?
Usually it's their supervisor.
Well, don't you think it would be good to include that so we know who the approval is by?
Yes.
And then down on the same page, in number 8, city vehicles should not be left idling, which I think is a great new. But I notice our fire trucks and ambulances are always idling, like if they stop to eat. So are fire trucks and ambulances included in police vehicles in the no idling mandate?
We refer to our fleet maintenance, but yes, we agree that those aren't. I think that the ambulances do for some reason, but I'm not aware of it. But we are trying to, of course, be fuel efficient and not have idling vehicles. That's why that is in there.
So, are you saying that we're gonna stop idling of all vehicles? Or not?
That is not possible, Counselor, with our ambulances because of the electronics in those things. You can't
Okay,
shut
so
all of
shouldn't
that
we
down.
exclude them here, if that's true?
Sure.
Okay, the next thing is, just a curious thing on page 5, down at the bottom, general coverage says, in case of an accident, departments will be charged for amounts not covered because of deductibles in at-fault or chargeable accidents. And I recall, you know, several years ago, we had an employee who wrecked the ladder truck, costing, how much was it, $100,000 close to it? So did our insurance
I
cover
wasn't
that?
here, so I don't know.
Oh, that's, got out of that one. But my question is.
Yeah, I did.
If our insurance didn't cover that, did the fire department get charged for $90,000 or whatever? And is that?
That's what this
How
would
does our
imply.
insurance work if it's our fault? Do they still cover it? I assume they do.
They still cover it.
So, and our deductible is modest, so it's not a problem.
Usually a $500 or $1,000 deductible.
Good. This is another example of one that we might have a reading and then come back and look at.
Vice Mayor Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. Assistant City Manager Urban, how many people drive city cars home?
Good
Go ahead.
Good question.
You may not know,
Do
but
you have any idea?
Vice Mayor, if I could, all of our police officers, if they're within, I believe it's an 11-mile as the crow flies, within the city. So the bulk of all of our police officers take police cars home. There is a handful that change out at the fleet maintenance. In our fire department, the chief and the assistant chief both take vehicles home because they're on call at any time. From the administrative side, almost the bulk of all the directors, because they're on call also. And then if we have any on-call maintenance people, we have weekend on-call maintenance people, and they're assigned a vehicle so that they take those vehicles home also.
Okay.
So there's
just
quite a
curious.
number of them from time to time that are utilizing these vehicles.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilman Smith, were you recommending that we bring this back?
I'd say make a motion to approve with those two little changes.
Okay.
Would you go with that, Tony? The supervising and the excluding the
Yes.
vehicles that have the idle.
The idling.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Oh, make it there.
Second, Vice Mayor Brown. Any discussion? Corr, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilman Stevens,
Yes.
Cox,
Yes.
Boatright,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes. Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, and the motion carries. We are on to agenda item number, I had to start all over. We're on to agenda item number 8. Consider and act upon an ordinance amending ordinance number 2656, which established the budget for fiscal year 2019-2020, repealing all conflicting ordinances, providing for a severability clause, and declaring an emergency. Ms. Swift.
All right. What you have in your packet tonight is some budget amendments that we're to finalizing the fiscal year 2019 and 2020, so we can get the year closed out. So it's a lot of it is appropriating funds that were added throughout the fiscal year that just need to be brought to a positive balance. Or so your first one on Schedule A is our retirees, appropriating funds for additional retiree payments that were added for the amount of $52,570. Exhibit 2, appropriating funds for police grant revenue and expenditures for the amount of $2,126. Exhibit 3 is appropriating funds for our capital outlay
From state forfeiture.
on, yes, state forfeitures, I'm sorry. I don't have my glasses on, I'm sorry. Exhibit 4 is our bond trustee fund. This is interest expenses that we incurred through
How come that goes back so far?
back to, which one?
2012, 2013?
Those are our bonds. It's just the bond,
Oh,
the year of the
designation of
bonds,
that
yes,
bond.
yes.
Gotcha.
It doesn't, yeah. It doesn't go back that far, but just according to that bond
The
itself.
name of the bond.
Yes. Number 5, grants and contributions that we have, contributions that we've received throughout the year, and then the expenses that contributed to that, totaling $23,000. And I think that's it on those.
All right, I have a request, and I made this to the city manager the
Yes.
other day. Is there any way in the world that we can use a bigger font on this thing?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
unless I'm sitting under a light like this, I cannot read it.
Be happy
Even,
to.
even with my glasses on, I can read it.
I can contest to that.
Great.
I'm having a hard time seeing it myself.
I understand.
Yes, I will take care of that for you,
I'm-
sir.
I'm the only one that'll admit I'm old, so.
Not a problem.
Are there any questions or comments? I take a motion and a second to approve. Motion Councilman Smith, second Vice Mayor Brown. Any further discussion? Corey, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Cox,
Yeah.
Boatright. Boatright.
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, and the motion carries. This has an emergency with it, so I take a motion and a second. Motion Councilman Smith, second Vice Mayor Brown. Any discussion? Corey, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Boatright,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Cox, Councilman Cox,
Yeah.
Mayor.
Yes, and the motion carries.
Thank
We're
you.
on to agenda item number 9, presentation of monthly financial update. You again.
Not going anywhere fast. All right. In your packet, this is your financial summary as of July, end of July of 2020. The first sheet is our general fund at a glance. We have completed 8.33% of the year, so we're just now starting off. Total revenues reflect 10.65 over budget, and expenditures are 0.96 over budget as well. Our transfers in and out, right on target. Below that is our MPWA fund at a glance. The revenues are 0.81% over budget. However, expenditures are 3.84 under budget. Transfers out, again, on target.
Ms. Swift, would you explain to the counselors why we're 10% over budget for revenues in the general fund?
The reason for that, sir, is that, and council members, this is the receipt of our CARES Act funding that we received. So that's put us well over our budgeted amounts, the 1.2 million that we had received back in July. You want me to hit on the sales? Well, I'll go back to.
Can I interrupt, ask a question right there?
Yes,
Mayor?
go ahead.
We're just between our general fund sales tax and our use tax, just between those that we're over budget, aren't we? Like, even if we remove the CARES Act money, aren't we over budget on revenues?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay, and how much CARES Act money is in that revenue figure, do you know?
It's the CARES Act was 1.2 million.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. The next graph is our monthly comparison of our previous years, 3 years. July sales tax number has increased over last year, which we were just referring to. The next form is your use tax. We continue to see an increase over the same time last year and the year before that as well. Our next graph is our MPWA's revenues for 2019. I'm sorry, that should be change the date on that. Our water sales, top half is residential and commercial. Residential and commercial sales are up over the previous year. Below that is our water districts and wholesale. We're seeing an increase up over last year. We continue to work on getting those water district meters swapped out. I know there's been just a small delay with utility maintenance, which being shorthanded and other projects done, but it is definitely a focus and a priority for us. And we'll can see that contributing to the increase of revenue as well. Lastly, you'll have the treasurer's report, and that indicates cash in the bank for us. Any questions?
All in all, we're doing okay so far.
So far, so good.
Yeah. Let's get it one more month and maybe we can call it a trend. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you. You bet.
We're on to agenda item number 10, discussion on possible zoning improvements and other means to encourage redevelopment upgrades to McAllister's long-established neighborhoods. Councilman Pritchard, I believe this is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So this idea started, or at least became recent, and as I've been spending, more time in Ward 6, walking around, enjoying the nice weather, I noticed that there were quite a few vacant lots, and then I started to set out on a journey to count them. And by vacant lots, I mean lots that are literally not occupied by any structure, with the exception of an outbuilding or maybe a garage. But in just the area between bounded on the north by Wyandotte, on the east by Strong, down to South, and then on the west side, Main Street, there's about 60 lots that have no structures on them. And then if you expand that to look at lots that have vacant structures on them, the number only increases. So I mean, that's a big chunk, a big number of the available land there, that we have water, that we have sewer, that we have roads running in front of, that we're just not utilizing. I think that if we, as a council or as a council, if we empowered the staff to say, bring us some recommendations on how we can modernize the zoning code, or maybe modernize isn't the right word, but how we can adopt some changes to the zoning code that is going to make it a little bit easier to build on those lots. I mean, I'm thinking about making modifications to the setback requirements, potentially even implementing build-to lines in exchange for setbacks. I'm talking about minimizing or potentially even eliminating minimum lot sizes, adding things like accessory dwelling units by right, potentially adding some commercial uses, or even going to a form-based code. I mean, I'm talking about, places around, around my neighborhood in 6th Ward, but this is something that affects, if you go up north of Carl Albert, into that part of town, and even the northwest section of town over, on the presidential streets. These are older neighborhoods that were developed mostly before World War II and in that time frame. And, in these neighborhoods, you see a lot of smaller lots. You see a lot of houses built closer to the street or closer to the setback. You see a lot of properties accessible via alley. And, our modern zoning code, which was probably adopted, 40 years ago or something like that, and has been updated, really doesn't allow for these types of neighborhoods. I mean, it's really good at creating more what I characterize as suburban type development, and we've got plenty of that. But I think we're missing an opportunity here to fill in some of our older neighborhoods. I think we can help these neighborhoods that are sort of suffering, not sort of, that are definitely suffering from a lack of investment. We can address some buildings that are currently occupied that, are being renovated either outside of the code compliance because, they maybe can't legally be renovated. And also there's just this big option missing. We talked, I do believe it was last meeting, about potentially recruiting new people to McAlester, or even some people that live here. They may like an option where they can live in a slightly less suburban development pattern, maybe something where they have better access on bike or on foot to to the surrounding neighborhoods and the amenities that come with that. So that's kind of thinking before I started working on this, or before I tried to get staff to work on this. I wanted to bring it before the council, because I know this is something that affects, like I said, many different areas of town, and kind of get some feedback on it and see if this is something that we want to consider, and if so, how might we make this a reality?
I don't have any ideas on how to make it a reality, but we have done a few things. I know we reduced the lot size, and we did the cottage development. So there seems to be a belief in this kind of thing on the council. So it would be something I'd be interested in learning more about. Ms. Clifton, do you have anything you'd like to say? Like the way I spring it on you?
Good evening, Council. There's a number of things that Councilman Pritchard is addressing that is in our comprehensive plan, and we are very hopeful to move towards. We have, reduced the minimum lot size. We've done the cottage house development and then expanded that to be a use permit after review. We're definitely going to be looking at, also, we did the property maintenance code. We'd like to move forward with that and maybe help, encourage, some better housing standards, but also moving forward, we will be looking at allowing multifamily near the employment centers. That was one thing that was recommended in the comprehensive plan. Maybe looking at city homes, which they look like single family housing, but they have maybe 2 dwelling units inside of it. However, it looks like a single family house on the front. But also ways to encourage smaller units, such as the accessory dwelling units, and also additionally the cottage house, which we've already done. So, absolutely, there's these things that are in our comprehensive plan that, we will be looking at and hopefully, getting to and addressing and bringing these things to council.
Right. Any questions or comments?
You mentioned reducing the lot sizes are down to 50 foot on a lot of these properties that we're talking about here. Are we talking about, you talk about a small house put on these 50-foot lots, or some type of business? Is that what our plan is? I wasn't part of that when it happened.
I think there isn't a plan yet. I think what Councilman Pritchard is talking about is trying to get a plan.
Okay.
And another aspect too.
Yeah, but Mayor, if I could answer that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think really, the mayor's right, is to put together a plan, but I think something that a helpful way to think about this, or an approach that might be successful, is because we essentially have one, we have a zoning code, and in that zoning, district, it applies everywhere. So the same rules that we're applying to some, to the lots in, on the very south side of town that was built 10 years ago, we're applying to a neighborhood over, in Northtown that was built 120 years ago. And just, the way those neighborhoods were platted out, they're very, very different. And so, this isn't necessarily about building small houses or about building big houses. It's about creating an opportunity to do both of those where appropriate. And, it might be helpful for us to begin to start thinking that we need an additional, zoning classification that we can apply to, to maybe these traditional, to these historic, to these older parts of town, to allow them to really be what they were originally designed to be.
That answer your question? Anyone else? Any comments, questions?
I'd like to say also that we
Mayor,
will
this
be.
is Councilman Stevens.
Okay, go ahead.
Mrs. Clifton, on what you said and the things there, and what we've done as city staff and council. Why do you think nobody's doing any of these things, or am I unaware of people that are?
I'm not sure. I don't have a good answer for that.
I'm sorry, I can't hear what your answer was.
She said she didn't have a good answer for that.
What would you guess?
A lot of these properties have liens on them that can't be overcome.
Yeah.
That's one of the major problems.
What do you think, Mrs. Clifton?
I don't know. I'm just, maybe they're not looking to build at this time. I mean, some of these changes were done late last year. Maybe they're not well known. I know that the cottage house development thing has not been codified, and maybe people are not aware of it, or like Pete had mentioned, a lot of them have liens against them, mowing liens or demolition liens, and they're just sitting there. So I don't really have a good answer.
We keep running across a lot of people that have just walked away from these homes, have walked away from these lots. They live in other parts of the country, and the last thing on their mind is these homes or these lots.
I understand. I mean, out of all the things that we talk about on council, this is the one I probably deal with on a more daily basis with my chosen profession and things that we deal with in our office. And I mean, I hate to beat the drum on this like I have in the past, and I know that several things Councilman Pritchard brings up I'm very supportive of. Maybe that's because we think more similarly than maybe some of the other council at times. But he's 100% correct that we just perpetually don't seem to do things to improve these certain areas. And it's not from a lack of trying, because I think city staff has shown and the council has shown that we want to continue to try to encourage people to do these things. But I guess as a council, things that I would say and I would encourage along these lines too is, if these are problems that we're seeing with judgments and liens and different things like that, I would love to see us tackle that as a council and figure out how we can overcome some of these things. Maybe it's a rebate program like we've done with our tickets. I mean, if you come in and pay 25% of the ticket, then we waive this other 75%. Maybe we do that with our tear down fees and the judgments that we have against these properties. If you come in and pay 25% of it, we'll waive the other 75. That would give us some much needed revenue that we have right now. We could plow it back into maybe doing some of these stuff. Maybe if we say, hey, if you'll deed us the lot for the amount that you have against a lien and clear other liens against it, then we'll handle the rest. So I think there's some creative ways we can do this to encourage it. But, just like the minimum lot size, reducing that was a great thing to do. But in case I'm missing it, and please tell me, Mrs. Clifton, if I'm wrong, we still have a minimum width on the lots, and we still have setbacks, and we still have side setbacks. Am I correct with that?
That is correct. And also part of the comprehensive plan is to do an update of our land development code, which hopefully I will be moving forward with that pretty soon. We have been restricted a little bit.
Everything that you just said.
We are going to do an update of the Chapter 62 Land Development Code, and in that there's plenty of recommendations to look at those issues, with area regulations, and maybe, update some of those things, and maybe even address, additional zoning areas, like Councilman Pritchard mentioned with, addressing those historical homes.
No, of course. And I think these are all, and this is where I think that combined efforts, maybe the same type of development that's encouraged in a lot of my ward isn't going to work for it because it doesn't fit. And it shouldn't try to fit, because if we're going to have affordable housing for our whole community, or we're going to attract these people that we're trying to attract, or we're going to try McAlester growing or make it more beautiful or pour into it and have that reinvestment in the heart of our community where we already have these things, we need to have some different ideas. in different types of codes and structures. So I'm strongly supportive of us as a council and city staff working together to come up with some creative ideas. We're just not reinventing the wheel, but going and stealing ideas from other successful small communities or large communities that have done these very things. So I'm supportive of this. I'd love to see us do some more.
Any other comments, questions?
Mayor, this is Councilman Cox.
Go ahead.
Ms. Clifton, back when I was on the planning commission, at one time we had talked about the path that Okmulgee had taken on their vacant lots and how they worked with the county and actually put those up for auction and to actually developers and builders at a reduced rate if they would build in a certain time frame. And I believe staff was working on that at one time. Has any more been done, or has that been pushed to the back, or what's the status on that?
We actually did, that was a concept that Okmulgee had. We did look into that with the city attorney, and that was something that they had moved forward on, and it ended up being pulled. They were trying to foreclose on those liens, and it did not go very well, so they ended up, backing out of that, so. As far as like our own ideas, yeah, we've looked into it, but it's foreclosing on those liens seem to be challenging, and I'm not sure. I mean, if council would support that, but there's quite a few of them, so.
The liens that we did have on several properties a few years back, did that just die in the courthouse, or did the lien courthouse foreclose on it, or did we try to? When you file big liens like you do when you tear a house down, and the tear down costs more than what the lot would cost to buy, what do we do? How do we recover any of that money, or do we even get to recover any of it?
I would say probably about half the time we don't. If the taxes and the liens go unpaid, they go up for the county tax sale. If they are not sold to someone, then the county obtains ownership of that property, and much of the time the liens are extinguished. And then the county either owns it or they resell it. But a lot of times we don't recover those.
Okay.
Any more comments?
Mayor, this is Councilman Pritchard. I'd like to say one last thing.
Okay.
I think the liens and this idea of the liens is certainly something to consider, but I also think it's important to understand that the liens are probably a symptom and not really the problem. They're a symptom of the problem. And the problem is that these neighborhoods are, for other reasons, but, in large part because of the zoning restrictions or the zoning requirements that we have upon them are not economically good investments. I mean, there are dozens of garage apartments, backyard apartments in Sixth Ward that currently exist, but, are probably not inhabited. They don't certainly look like they're inhabited, that could not easily be occupied. I mean, there is a path to occupy them, but it involves rezoning. I mean, that's just one part of this, but there are a number of changes that we can make to these historical districts, these neighborhoods, that will make them better investments for a lot of people. I think the changing the lot requirement, or the minimum lot requirement to 4,500 square feet, is a really good example of how one approach does not work here. I mean, for the neighborhoods that I'm talking about that I live in, 4,500 square feet is probably too big. For the neighborhoods on the south side of town, for the neighborhood over on the northeast side of town, some of the newer developments, 4,500 may be too small. And, so we're at this number that probably, see my son's, I don't know if y'all can hear him, but he's mad about it, he's crying. But 4,500 square feet is probably this compromise that doesn't serve either constituency very well. So if we took an approach that realized these are but these are distinctly different development patterns, then we would have a better chance of adopting a zoning ordinance that allowed both of these different types of developments to really shine and to benefit this community. So I hope we'll do that.
It's pretty slick using your child to sell your point for you there, but
I got to use it for something.
Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Pritchard. We're on to new business. Any matter not known which could not have been reasonably foreseen prior to the time of posting the agenda in accordance with Section 311.9, Title 25 Oklahoma State Statutes. Do we have any new business?
We do not, Mayor.
Then let's go to the city manager's report.
Got a couple of exciting things that are going on here at the city. One of the passions of Miss Giacomo since she was with Pride McAlester has been the assessment of Hunter Park and the glass situation up at Hunter Park. And, you know, I'm really proud of her continuing on with that plight. And she now has DEQ doing an environmental assessment on that entire park. They'll be down in the next couple of weeks. And it's been a passion of hers, and she's really moving forward on it. I also want to commend her and Shelley Colbert, who went out the other night and did a lighting assessment up at Hunter Park and found a number of lights that were out. Contacted Frank Phillips with PSO, and those lights have all now been repaired, and the place just looks so much better. So she's doing a great job up there. She's been chasing this project for years, and it's finally coming to fruition. Part of our plumber assessment, which was the engineering firm for our wastewater plants, one of theirs was plans to change over from our liquid chlorine conversion. We are moving forward with the plans and specs on that and getting that accomplished. The phase 3 design of the Connolly sewer replacement. We've done phase 1 and phase 2, which have been large projects. Phase 3 is now in design. Over the next year or so, you know, that whole Connolly addition is going to be re-sewered, and it's great for the community.
Will it fix the problems on Keller?
I have no idea, but I'll look at a map.
Okay, because I know that there's a guy that lives down there that gets, whenever it rains hard, he can't use his facilities in his.
Okay. Well, we're looking at all of those areas back in there. You know, I think it was 2 weeks ago that we signed a large work order to repair some other areas over off of Park, and we're getting those accomplished. So we're addressing them and moving forward with them as we can come up with solutions. Been a lot of interest in the animal control officer position. We are taking that position has been funded by the city. We are taking applications currently, and we feel like sometime around the middle of September we should have that position filled and moving forward. Tomorrow is the start of our asphalt overlay project with Apex. That is a $559,000 project to overlay 26 blocks here in the city of McAlester, and that project gets underway tomorrow. I think everybody got the announcement that the recycling center is reopened. It is accessible 365 days a year, 24 hours each day. And one of the things that's just kind of slipped through during this pandemic is we were able to, through a grant program, receive a new baler. That baler has been hooked up and it's ready to be used. So that's exciting for the recycling center. The landfill, we sent out all the information on that. It is now open Monday through Friday from 8 to noon for residents of McAlester. And the last thing that I want to talk about just briefly is we have finished the second round of mowing in our cemeteries. Cemeteries look great. The weed eating looks great. We've finished a complete round of mowing in our parks. And as of this week, several of the crews are heading out to the highways to start mowing the right-of-ways on the highways. So we are quickly getting caught up with all of the mowing here in the city. Mayor, that's all I have at this time.
All right, well, thank you. Remarks and inquiries by City Council, Councilman Smith?
I just wanted to commend you and your staff on the cemeteries, and Mike Deek, I was at the cemetery yesterday, it looked great.
You've done a good job.
And they had a lot to overcome. Appreciate it.
Councilman Stevens?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Councilman Cox?
Nothing tonight.
Vice Mayor Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. Just have one thing, I'd like to have the city manager to check out this abandoned house or send someone to check it out. I know you're not going yourself, but send somebody from code to 201 West Taylor. If they can check that house out, I'd appreciate it. Get some complaints on it.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Boatright?
I have 4 or 5 different things I need to ask the city manager. I want to thank him for getting the cemetery and the parks mowed. Are we back at a full staff at the cemetery yet?
No, sir, we only have two employees. Actually, one of them, well, we have 2 employees at the cemetery
Okay.
right now.
Is there any schedule to get those back? Are we using inmates or?
Inmates are not available.
Okay.
We have been able to get 2 inmates from the county jail. That just started 2 weeks ago, and they're only
Okay.
available to us on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Okay.
But we have not had any state inmates since March, and they're still in lockdown.
Okay. Another question. Have we had many city employees test positive for the COVID? Is it, I mean, do we?
We have, yes.
Okay.
We have had city employees, not, when you use the word many, we have had positive employees tested, yes.
Okay. Do these employees, do they get paid when they're on COVID? Or is it they taking their sick leave, or how are we handling that?
There is 14 days that's allowed to them, through the CARES Act.
Okay. Another question. Have we found a manager for the airport yet?
We have not,
Okay, still out, still open?
yes.
Okay, I just asking a few questions.
Sure.
And, I think that's it.
Thank you. Councilman Pritchard?
No, thank you, Mayor.
All right. Mayor's comments, just thanking all the employees that we've brought back that have really jumped right in, and they've been working really hard to get caught up. I know it's, not just the things that we see, like the cemeteries and the parks, but also the people in codes and abatement. The list of places that needed addressed didn't stop because we had people furloughed. So there's a lot of people working very, very hard to get caught up, and I just want to give them my appreciation on that. And with that, we will recess the council meeting, and I would take a motion and a
Can
sec. Oh, I'm
One
sorry.
thing?
Yes.
No, go ahead.
No, we could. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right, in that case, I would take a motion and a second to convene as McAlester Airport Authority. Motion to include approval of minutes from the August 11th, 2020 regular meeting of McAlester Airport Authority. Confirm action taken on items C, 1, and 7, and to adjourn. Motion, Councilman Smith, second Councilman Boatright. Any discussion? Corey, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Boatright,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Cox, Councilman Cox,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes, and the motion carries. I'd now take a motion and second to convene as McAlester Public Works Authority. Motion to include approval of minutes from August 11th, 2020 regular meeting of McAlester Public Works Authority. Confirm action taken on City Council Agenda Items C, 1, 5, 7, and 8, and to adjourn. Motion Councilman Smith, second Vice Mayor Brown. Any discussion? Corey, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Cox,
Yes.
Boatright,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, and the motion carries. I'd now take a motion and second to convene as McAlester Retirement Trust Authority. Motion to include approval of minutes from the July 28th, 2020 regular meeting of McAlester Retirement Trust Authority. Approval of retirement benefit payments for the period of August 2020. Confirm action taken on City Council Agenda Item 1, and to adjourn. Motion Councilman Smith, second Councilman Boatright. Any discussion? Corey, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Boatright,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Cox,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, and the motion carries. We'll now reconvene. I would take a motion to adjourn. Motion Councilman Smith, second to Vice Mayor Brown. Any discussion? Corey, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Boatright,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Cox, Councilman Cox,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, and we're adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good job.